If I said the words to you, "'Twas the night before Christmas," I'm guessing most of you would have some idea of what lines come next, whether the original poem or a parody or satire version that you might have heard of. What do you think comes next, young lady? "'Twas the night before Christmas, and all through the house, Kyra was chasing a cute little mouse." Yes, begging for tummies to be tickled and rubbed. Something, she wants some grub. But anyway, most of you would know what follows. These lines are iconic. "'Twas the night before Christmas, when all through the house, not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The stockings were hung by the chimney with care, in hopes St. Nicholas would soon be there," and so on and so on. It's a long poem. This absolute classic of a poem was originally thought to have been written by Clement Clarke Moore in the first half of the 1800s, but now there's evidence to suggest it's actually a lot older than that and was actually written by Major Henry Livingston Jr. in the 1700s. Clement apparently just came along a few years later and said, yeah, I quite like this poem. Let me just put it in this anthology with no credit to the original author. All drama over the poet aside though, and yeah, it is a good poem. It's one of those poems that even people who say they don't like poetry will recognise and probably have a little bit of a soft spot for. It's been used in short films, illustrated books. As a kid, I had a recording of it on a cassette tape. Yep, I am that old. I had tapes and a little Walkman with little earphones I would wander around with. I loved that Walkman. Did anyone else do that thing where they would have like blank tapes and every week you'd try and record songs off the radio and you'd always cut off the first few seconds, but you'd be trying, you'd be like timing it correctly, and then you'd have like these tapes of like it was so bad. The only way to get music was to record off the radios. Then you'd have these tapes of basically like half bits of songs that you really liked and they were all overlapping, and they were the good old days. But this poem has also been parodied and updated and used as inspiration for countless other poets and authors and artists. It's been turned into short stories, short films, songs. I literally this year have an advent calendar that my sister gave me that's basically all beautiful illustrations of dogs wearing Christmas hats and stuff. And each day you open the door and it's a new line of a poem. And the poem is a parody of this, but about dogs like chewing up Christmas stockings and knocking ornaments off the tree and just being little terrors, and how it's adorable and how that makes Christmas perfect. It's lovely. Like, it's one of the best things I've ever been given. It's wonderful. I would argue that this is probably one of the most well-loved and well-known Christmas poems in the English language, and it's really easy to see why. Its rhyming couplets make it memorable and fun and create this rhythm that brings up nostalgic feelings of childlike joy and excitement. But it's by no means the only Christmas poem out there. Today I want to have a look at some Christmas and winter and holiday poems and talk through a few that are my favourites, and then give a couple of honourable mentions at the end to some others that you guys recommended or others that I enjoy but just don't have time to talk about in a lot of detail. It doesn't matter if you're religious or not, if you celebrate Christmas or any other holiday, or if you just enjoy the winter time. Hopefully there'll be a poem in here that you'll enjoy. If you sometimes find poetry a little pretentious and want something a little bit sillier, but you also want something that's quite fun on the surface but has a much deeper meaning, then one of my first recommendations is Talking Turkeys by one of my absolute favourite poets ever, Benjamin Zephaniah. I think I've spoken about him before, but Benjamin Zephaniah is one of the reasons that I fell in love with poetry so hard and so fast when I was a kid. I absolutely adored his performances and his writing and his work. His poems are fun and bold, and he performs them with so much passion. You can tell he absolutely loves every second of what he's doing, and I just adore him. I think he's wonderful. Benjamin was born in Birmingham in the UK, but his parents were from Barbados and Jamaica, and he actually writes and performs with a strong Jamaican accent and dialect, and he manages to put this on paper in his poems so you can see the pronunciation of his words on the paper, and I think that's absolutely wonderful. And this is something I was actually talking to Savvy about the other day on her podcast Your Morning Guru. If you want to go see that, I'll leave it linked in the video description below. But we were discussing how one of the things I found when writing my own poetry is I am from Yorkshire, and we do say some things quite differently to other people. We pronounce words differently, like instead of saying warm, this is so hard, we say warm. Instead of saying, you know, the shop is open from this time until this time, we say it's open 9 while 5, something like that. Or instead of saying things like I'm going to go to the shop, we say I'm gonna gut shop. So the Yorkshire in me is something that sometimes slips out quite naturally, and it's hard to translate that to paper, and it means that sometimes where I think I've got a solid rhythm, other people are like, this doesn't work, because they're reading it in perhaps standard English and I've written it in a Yorkshire accent. So this is something I'm taking inspiration from people like Benjamin Zephaniah for, and I'm trying to make sure I put my own dialect on paper so people can understand the poems as they're meant to be read, and they see the rhymes that I've intended and the rhythm that I've intended because of the Yorkshire accent and dialect that I grew up with. Benjamin is an absolute legend when it comes to putting a Jamaican dialect on paper. He knows exactly how to do it, and it creates these beautiful, beautiful rhythms, makes the poems flow in such a captivating way. They grab your attention straight away, and you can hear his voice as you're reading the poems, and it's absolutely beautiful. Talking Turkeys is a great poem too, especially for Christmas, because it is from one of his collections for kids, but I think it's a poem that we can all get something out of, no matter how old we get, because it's silly, but it's deep too, which, if you've been watching a while, you might know is something I love in poetry. I think a lot of Christmas poems and stories, especially for kids, do focus quite often on the superficial stuff, on the, oh, you're gonna get presents and eat sweets and play in the snow. But Benjamin brings up the other side of Christmas as well, and he makes us actually think about the ethics behind what we're doing and what we're consuming. What about the food we're eating? Where has this come from? Who's had to suffer for us to get it and benefit from it? What about all the money that goes into Christmas? Who is really profiting and who's being exploited? Poems like this make us stop and think about what we're actually celebrating and why. Why do we keep going along with so many of these traditions that have been around for such a long time? Why do we keep them going, and is there a better way? I'm going to try and read you the poem now, and then we'll discuss it a little bit more. Be nice to your turkeys this Christmas, because turkeys just want to have fun. Turkeys are cool, turkeys are wicked, and every turkey has a mum. Be nice to your turkeys this Christmas. Don't eat it, keep it alive. It could be a mate and not on your plate. Say, yo, turkey, I'm on your side. I got lots of friends who are turkeys, and all of them fear Christmas time. They want to enjoy it. They say humans destroyed it, and humans are out of their mind. Yeah, I got lots of friends who are turkeys, and they all have a right to a life, not to be caged up and genetically made up by any farmer and his wife. Turkeys just want to play reggae. Turkeys just want to hip-hop. Can you imagine a nice young turkey saying, I cannot wait for the chop? Turkeys like getting presents. They want to watch Christmas TV. Turkeys have brains and turkeys feel pain, in many ways like you and me. I once knew a turkey called Turkey. He said, Benji, explain to me please, who put the turkey in Christmas, and what happens to Christmas trees? I said, I'm not too sure, Turkey, but it's nothing to do with Christ Mass. Humans get greedy and waste more than need be, and businessmen make loads of cash. Be nice to your turkey this Christmas. Invite them indoors for some greens. Let them eat cake and let them partake in a plate of organic grown beans. Be nice to your turkey this Christmas and spare them the cut of the knife. Join Turkeys United and they'll be delighted, and you will make new friends for life. I just feel that uncomfortable juxtaposition of silly images of things like turkeys sat around playing reggae music, and then turkeys being caged up and genetically made up by any farmer and his wife. That uncomfortable, ugly juxtaposition is so important for making us realise, hang on, these are living things too. Why are we treating them any different? And he does this in a way that isn't preachy or hollow or just like him standing there virtue signalling. Like, listen to these lines again. Turkeys like getting presents. They want to watch Christmas TV. Turkeys have brains and turkeys feel pain, in many ways like you and me. It does seem silly at first to suggest that a silly little turkey wants to sit around and, open presents and watch telly. But then it is followed up by the more serious reminder that they're living creatures too. They have brains, they feel pain. They're just like us in so many ways. And this contrast of silly and serious ideas really hammers home his message of, hang on, think about what you're doing, think about what you're consuming, and think about who you're hurting in the process. My favourite part is in stanza 3 though, where Benjamin directly talks to a turkey. This is like peak turkey personification, as the turkey's asking, why is all this happening? Why are you eating me for Christmas dinner? Where did these traditions come from? And Benjamin straight up directly replies to this turkey with, I'm not too sure, turkey, but it's nothing to do with Christ Mass. Humans get greedy and waste more than need be, and businessmen make loads of cash. And it's true. Christmas is an incredibly wasteful time. It does just make rich people richer, and the rest of us feel like we need to spend more money than we have in order to uphold traditions that we might not even actually agree with. We might not even understand where they came from. We've completely lost the original meaning of. I think poems like this that get us to actively question our actions and motives without being stuck up about it are so important, and I think there's something we should be reading and listening to and consuming a lot more. Benjamin Zephaniah is such a powerful poet to me because he can talk about these issues, and I don't just mean things like animal rights and anti-consumerism like here, but he also calls out racism, homophobia. He's spoken a lot about the UK's political and education systems and how he thinks they can be improved. Not just that they need to, he gives real honest suggestions and ideas. He is a very, very smart, very kind man, and he raises these incredibly important issues with his work without ever seeming like he thinks he's better than anyone. He never talks down to anyone. He's just very honest and upfront, and his work is very accessible, and I respect that so much. That and the fact that back in 2003 or something, he was being considered for an OBE, and his response was literally, "Up yours." He said that he didn't want to be part of a system which had encouraged and enabled slavery and oppression, and he didn't want to be rewarded by that system, and I think good on him for that. Absolutely good on him. This was back in a time when Tony Blair was still Prime Minister, and I found this great quote from an article that he wrote in which he said, "I'm not one of those who are obsessed with their roots, and I'm certainly not suffering from a crisis of identity. My obsession is about the future and the political rights of all people." Benjamin Zephaniah, OBE, no way Mr. Blair, no way Mrs. Queen. I'm profoundly anti-empire. And I love that so much. I have so much respect for that and that man. And that's why I wanted to share this poem with you, because I think, even though it might seem like a little bit of a downer, it's an important one to talk about and discuss, and it brings up important issues that we should be thinking of around Christmas time, and at all times of year, to be honest. With a similarly, I guess you could say sort of like cynical tone, but maybe more thoughtful is the right word. I want to read you a short but powerful poem by Chris Green titled Christmas Tree Lots. Christmas trees lined like war refugees, a fallen army made to stand in their greens, cut down at the foot on their last leg. They pull themselves up, arms raised. We drop them like wood. Tied, they're driven through the streets, dragged through the door, cornered in a room, given a single blanket, only water to drink, surrounded by joy, forced to wear a gaudy gold star, to surrender their pride. They do their best to look alive. It's a simple one, it's a short one, but I think it's damn powerful. And I really love poems like this that capture that one particular moment that might seem so small and simple, but really it says so much about a larger issue. This isn't just a poem about bringing in a Christmas tree. It's a statement on consumerism in general and greed and how absurd some traditions are. And it really makes you think about what we value in life and why. I think it's very easy for Christmas poems to get all nostalgic and be all like, "Ooh, smell the tree, the sparkle of the ornaments." But this one's different because it reminds us that we're actually chopping down a living tree so we can cover it in shiny plastic. And for what? It's not saying that this is necessarily a bad thing, it's not saying that we shouldn't do it, but it is making us think, hang on, why are we doing this? What am I really getting out of this? And is there a way to fulfill these traditions while being more eco-friendly? I also really enjoy the stanza about how the tree is dragged through the door to be surrounded by joy. That hits me quite hard, not so much because of the tree itself, but because I think we've all kind of felt like that tree at some point in our lives, but maybe especially at Christmas time. Like, we're there out of obligation. We're there because we have to be, because other people forced us to be there, but we're really out of our comfort zones. Everyone else seems to be having fun around us and fitting in, and we're on the outskirts watching it all and feeling uncomfortable. We're surrounded by joy, but we're not feeling it ourselves. And that's kind of why I like this poem, because I definitely relate to how this tree feels around my own family. But if you do want to look at it from a different angle and put a more positive spin on things, I also quite like to think of it another way. If you look at how the tree changes and progresses throughout the poem opens with none of the trees being individuals. They're all lined up, sad, suffering, struggling with no real place to call their own. They're just lined up, whatever. But it ends with each of them having been chosen because they were special to someone. They were wanted by someone, and they spend their Christmases surrounded by love and family instead of just lined wind up with nowhere to go. So if you want to look at it from that angle, which is very different to the first angle, I think it's a little bit more of a happier ending and it's a bit more of a positive spin on things. And I guess it shows that just because Christmas can have some issues and there are some problems with it, it can also be a good thing for some people too. This poem though, if you want to take the more cynical interpretation, did remind me a lot of Wendy Cope's very short A Christmas Poem. I've spoken quite a lot about Wendy Cope before on my channel because I really like how she's witty and a bit snarky, but also just very real, and she has such a thorough understanding of poetry and poetic techniques, and she takes that very, very strong foundation of knowledge and she does something very fun and lighthearted with it, which I absolutely adore. None of her work is pretentious or in your face or difficult to read or understand. It's all very accessible and fun, but also very well crafted. And this poem is absolutely no different. It's short but humorous, but with the humour also comes a little bit of sadness, you know? At Christmas, little children sing and merry bells jingle. The cold winter air makes our hands and faces tingle, and happy families go to church and cheerily they mingle, and the whole business is unbearably dreadful if you're single. And as someone who personally has spent the last 2 Christmases alone, this is something I do majorly relate to and have very conflicting feelings about. And again, I think this might be something that I've spoken about before in a couple of videos, but I found Christmas quite hard and very unenjoyable for pretty much like as long as I can remember. No matter how content you are with the rest of your life or not, even if you love being alone or single or you have great friends or whatever, there's something about Christmas time that just makes you feel a bit like crap. Like you're not good enough, like you'll never be enough. I have a bit of like mixed feelings about the fact that every TV program and film and song and even adverts all go on about how the real meaning of Christmas is family, bringing families together, families doing things for each other, families enjoying spending time together. Family is what makes Christmas real and good, which sounds lovely. Until you're one of the people who realises you don't have that. You're not close with your families. And then you just feel like this big awful failure and like there's something wrong with you. And it makes Christmas a really, really difficult time of year. Honestly, like most of my memories of Christmas back when I lived with my parents, from being like a kid to a teenager, involve things like my dad swearing while throwing pans around while he makes like boiled soggy mush out of vegetables with no seasoning, or my brother shouting and slamming things, and that one Christmas where he got so mad he kicked a hole in my dad's greenhouse and then there was this huge argument and everything got bad. And meanwhile the TV's on and it's too loud and everyone's shouting and I'm on the verge of this like sensory meltdown literally all day because I can't deal with all the noise around me and everyone's emotional, I don't know how to deal with it. And most Christmases I went to bed crying. It was just too much. It was a nightmare. And that's why now I quite like to spend them alone. This year my partner's going to be with me, which is nice. We're just going to have like a lovely, nice little quiet day. We're going to play some board games, we're going to drink some wine, we're going to eat a lot of toffee pavlova, which I can't wait for. And as perfect as that is for me, and I'm looking forward to it, there's always that part of me that like when I see stuff on TV that tell me you should be with your parents and your parents should be loving and your parents should be nice to you and everyone should get on and have a laugh together and everyone should want to spend time together. I keep seeing all of that and I think, well, I don't have that. So does that mean there's something inherently wrong with me? Does that mean I'm the problem? And that's kind of what Wendy Cope's poem makes me think of and reminds me of. This poem with like its fun, light rhyme scheme is showing that everything around you can seem all lovely and happy and fun. And you know, that can be all nice and fun and jingling and mingling and tingling and all these like fun, happy rhymes. Despite all of that, Christmas will still find a way to remind you of what you're missing in your life and make you feel inadequate. And that's kind of what this poem encompasses for me. But that's also why I like to talk about this stuff, because I feel like with so much content out there telling you this stuff and this poem encompassing that, I think it's important to have voices out there like mine who can come and speak to a wider audience and say, you know what, no, you're not actually inadequate. There's nothing wrong with you. You get joy where you want to get joy. You don't have to do it this certain way. You don't need a family. You don't need this and this and this and whatever all the film's telling you. Christmas is what you make of it. And if you want to spend that alone and be happy while you do that, that's absolutely fine. If you want to spend it with one person, if you want to spend it with friends, if you want to spend it with family, if you want to spend it doing volunteer work, if you want to spend it any way you want, That is okay. Yeah, and that's kind of why I wanted to talk about this poem. But enough misery and sad talk and all of that stuff. Let's end on a happier note of wonder and excitement and talk about Brian Patton's poem, Remembering Snow. This is a happier one, I promise. I did not sleep last night. The falling snow was beautiful and white. I dressed, sneaked down the stairs and opened wide the door. I had not seen such snow before. Our grubby little street had gone. The world was brand new, and everywhere there was pureness in the air. I felt such peace watching every flake. I felt more and more awake. I thought I'd learned all there was to know about the trillion million different kinds of swirling, frosty, falling flakes of snow, but that was not so. I had not known how vividly it lit the world with such a peaceful glow. Upstairs my mother slept. I could not drag myself away from that sight to call her down and have her share that mute miracle of snow. It seemed to fall for me alone. How beautiful our grubby little street had grown. And I absolutely love this poem, and I think it's a nice happy one to end on because it captures the absolute beauty of snow and winter in general. And I know that personally I can get a little bit cynical and grumbly sometimes in the winter because the cold and the snow and the dark nights and the inconvenience and grumble. But it's poems like this that remind me that even when things have their downsides, they can still be absolutely beautiful. Yeah, the snow is cold, but then when you're wrapped up in a nice warm blanket, hugging a hot water bottle and watching it out the winter as it covers everything and makes everything look pure and beautiful and clean and nice and new, like there's something special and magical about that, and that's a wonderful feeling that I wouldn't ever want to lose, you know? And it's something that I think I need to sometimes sit back and stop and appreciate a little bit more, and poems like this remind me to do that, you know? I love in this poem the repeated juxtaposition of images of things like the grubby little street with the falling snow, beautiful and white, and how it has the snow, it has these transformative properties to take things which are absolutely mundane or ugly or dirty and make them beautiful again, even if that beauty is ephemeral. Its ephemeral nature is almost what we need to appreciate and be like, this isn't going to be here for long. Let's really appreciate and enjoy this beauty while it's here. I also love the childlike hyperbole alongside the alliteration in lines like the trillion million different kinds of swirling frosty falling flakes of snow. It has that tone of this excited child who is just like, oh my god, it's snowing, the falling frosty flakes, a trillion million different kinds. Like, it's such an excited child who is just filled with joy, who wants to rush out into the snow and play and throw snowballs and build snowmen and, oh my god, it's a snow day and we're going to get a day of school and can you see it and all these things we're going to do. We're going to go sledding, we're going to do this and this and this. It's pure joy and excitement, and I love that. It reminds me of like this one time when I was a kid and we couldn't afford anything like an actual sled or anything like that. So my parents' garden was on like a hill, and it was this garden that we shared with the whole street. And one winter it snowed and we took black bin bags and plastic shopping bags and we tied them together and made like sleds to go down the hill on out of plastic bags. It was fun. And it's one of those things that, like, as an adult you probably wouldn't think to do it, but as a kid we wanted to go sledding and we couldn't, so we did. We found a way to do it anyway. And that's one of those few, like, kind of happy moments with my brother and sister where I don't remember us arguing or anything, which was nice, and I don't remember anyone being too angry, which was nice. It's just a nice, happy memory I have. And it's that kind of joy and excitement, and it's so pure, you know? It's like a real pure joy that nothing can really spoil or ruin. That's what's captured in this poem for me, and I love that. And again, we see this sort of childlike excitement in the lineation, especially towards the end of the poem. These lines, upstairs my mother slept. I could not drag myself away from that sight to call her down and have her share that mute miracle of snow. It seemed to fall for me alone. There's a wonderful mix here of end-stopped lines and enjambment, which means the sentence or phrase carries on over multiple lines, which to me gives this impression of a kid watching the snow fall, and he's just so excited and he just wants to talk and talk and talk about how great it is, but at the same time he keeps sort of stopping himself and pausing, holding his breath, trying to catch his breath, as though he's a little scared because he knows that he's seeing something special, and he's a little bit scared because if he talks too fast or he talks too loudly or he leaves for a second to go get his mum, he's scared that he's gonna scare it off and then it'll be over and the magic spell will break. And he's like, no, if I'm quiet, if I'm still, if I can just watch this alone, It's falling for me alone, and it's gonna stay like this for as long as I'm still and quiet. You know, it's quite beautiful. It's lovely. And on that really nice, happy, lovely note, this is where I'm going to end today's video. I also want to just give a few quick shout outs to some other Christmas and holiday and winter poems, which I haven't had time to talk about, but do think are excellent, including Mrs. Scrooge by Caroline Duffy, Little Tree by E.E. Cummings, and Mistletoe by Walter de la Mare. I think these are wonderful, and if you want to go give them a Google and a read, I thoroughly recommend it. I also recommend the collections of Christmas poems by Caroline Duffy and Wendy Cope's collection of Christmas poems as well. They are fantastic, and I thoroughly recommend. But other than that, I would just like to know down in the comments if you have any Christmas or winter poems that you like and enjoy that you'd like to share with us. Leave your recommendations down in the comments. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching today. I appreciate you guys a hell of a lot. It would be great if you are new here, if you want to subscribe. I'm trying to like build subscribers a little bit more. I don't really ask for subscribers very often, and that's kind of one of the reasons I think my growth is a little bit slow sometimes. So next year, I would really like, I think, to try and get to 300,000 subscribers. So if you'd like to help me start now, that would be lovely. Thank you. Also, if you did like this video, feel free to share it around on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever social media platforms you use. I would appreciate that a lot. And if you enjoyed this, leave a like as well. But for now, however you are celebrating over the next few weeks, if you're doing Christmas or some other celebration, or you're just having a nice little winter to yourself, or actually it might not even be winter for some of you, enjoy your summers too. Point is, have a wonderful next few weeks. I hope you all stay safe, stay happy, and look after yourselves and each other. But for now, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all again really soon.